Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to make some fried pork tenderloin sandwiches with some home fries and cream spinach. So let's start by getting our home fries kind of up and prepped. I have 3 nice big russet potatoes. I'm going to cut off the top and kind of bottom of this. And then we're going to just do a kind of slight peel on them. This is just going to take off most of the skin for the French fries, leaving just a little bit on there. And then we're going to kind of just cut them in French fry shape. So just nice kind of long sticks that we will then kind of coat up and season and put in the oven on our air fryer setting. And the trick is just making sure that they are all pretty much the same size so that they cook up at around the same time. Just making sure you don't have any, French fry that is like massively bigger than the others. Here, just trying to even some of these out. And then we're going to do the same thing. Just cut off the top and bottom. This just gives me a nice level surface for doing our quick peel on it, where we're just taking off a little bit of that skin. And now you can always keep the skin on, but my kids prefer less skin on their potatoes or on their French fries. And then it also makes it easier to have like a nice kind of flat surface to cut through our potatoes. And I was sitting here deciding, my son has been asking for fried pork tenderloin sandwiches for like a week and a half now. And I was like, okay, we'll make them. And I was like, what should we have with them? And to me, I'm just like, they're a French fry type of meal. You just got to have your French fries with them. And then I was like, I haven't done cream spinach in a while. And I love cream spinach and cream kale. It's so simple to make. So I was like, oh, these will all go well together. We toss these out, clear up a little room, and then I'll get my last one cut and prepped, and then we will seasoning. We're going to keep our seasoning super simple today. We're just going to do, a little bit of olive oil, Lowry seasoned salt, flour, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of black pepper and onion powder because I want to just have it a little bit of a kick to it as well. Sometimes I do Cajun fries, but I'm keeping it simple today. Or Cajun sweet potato fries. Now, those are delicious. But I do those typically at lunchtime because my kids aren't as big of a fan of sweet potato fries. Part of me thinks it's just they won't give it a fair shot because it's a sweet potato and they somehow think it's more of a vegetable. Okay. Almost have these guys kind of chopped up. And I'm keeping them nice and long, but of course you could also cut them all in half and then just have them slightly shorter. But you got to have the nice long French fries for dipping. Here we go. Okay. Now that they are prepped, into the bowl we go. Here we go. And the trick for getting really good home fries is adding a little bit of flour when you season them up, because that gives you a kind of a crispy edge on your fries. So it gives you that mock as if you fried it. We're going to put about like a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of oil in here. You don't need a whole lot of oil, but you want enough to where you kind of make a little batter on your French fries or your potatoes here. I'm going to add in about 3 tablespoons of flour. It's kind of like 1 tablespoon per potato. You can also use almond flour if you want to do gluten-free. It works really well with almond flour as well. And then we're going to add in our Lowry seasoning salt. We want about a tablespoon or so, and maybe a little bit less, but enough to kind of cover them completely. And then, of course, our onion powder, maybe like a half a tablespoon. This is going to give it a nice savory flavor. And then we're going to add a little bit of black pepper. Just give it a little bit of spice. About, I want to say, maybe between a teaspoon and a full one. And then we're just going to go in And we're going to just coat all of these up with our hands until they're all coated with our delicious seasoning blend. And again, that flour is going to kind of create this crispy crust on your French fry, which is going to give you just that, almost as if you fried them in oil. And then, of course, the Lowry seasoning salt is going to give you that steak fry flavor.
You have a question? Have you ever used cornstarch instead?
You can use cornstarch and it will give you a nice crisp on it. I do feel like you taste a little bit more of that cornstarch to it, but it does work well for it. Okay. We are going to put these out on our thing. And also another one that works well is, that fake Parmesan, that powderized Parmesan cheese. That actually works really well. And it gives you kind of a Parmesan fry with garlic salt, but it gives you a nice crispy edge on it as well. Okay, let's spread these out because we want to make sure that we have none of the fries touching each other, giving them as much space as possible. And I have these kind of cooking on my big sheet and a half here. That way, I can get it all in the top layer, because with French fries, you don't want to have stacked trays because that top layer will cook up perfectly, but the bottom layer won't get as crisp because it's, being blocked by a tray. So the big sheet and a half, I think, work perfect for this.
Yeah, question. Can the fries be air fried?
Yes, you can definitely air fry them. I'm actually doing the air fry setting on my oven. And I find that it cooks them up a little bit faster and it gives you a nice, really nice crisp thing. Now, if you don't have an air fryer or your oven doesn't have an air fry setting, you can also do convection bake, which is similar to an air fry. It like spreads the air around, or like blows the air around. And I'm going to do mine on the air fryer setting at 425. And I would do convection bake at 425. And if you had to do a traditional bake, I would do that about 450. There we go. So we've got these all spread out. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse. And then we're going to go pop these in the oven to let them kind of crisp up and make delicious fries. Now, sometimes I also do loaded fries, which are like after you cooked them up, you kind of push them all together and then you cover them with cheese and like bacon and green onions and you rebake them. But today we're keeping it simple. So we've got our seasoned home fries in. And then I'm just going to set my timer for 15 minutes. And again, I do have it on the air fryer setting at 425, but convection bake at 425 works just as well. Okay, let's get ready to make our dredge for our pork tenderloin sandwiches. And then we'll hammer them out and we'll get ready to fry them. So for our dredge, we're going to start with our flour. We're going to use about 2 cups of flour. Now I'm using about 1.5 pounds of pork tenderloin. These are the thin cut pork tenderloin or thin cut pork chops because you don't want them super thick. We're going to be hammering them out even thinner to make them a bit more tender. But if you have a thicker one, you just want to hammer it out more. For this, but it is such a delicious sandwich. And I know it's popular in the Midwest. We always have them like growing up, and Culver's has like pork tenderloin sandwiches.
Yeah, quick question. What do you season the fries with?
The fries, I kept it simple. It was Lowry seasoned salt, onion powder, flour, and black pepper, and then olive oil. Okay, we've got our 2 cups of flour in here. We're going to add in about a teaspoon of paprika. This is going to give it a mild savory flavor to it and really give it a nice golden color to it. We are going to add in about a tablespoon of onion powder. It's going to give a nice, lovely savory flavor. We're going to add in about I want to say like a 1/2 tablespoon of Lowry seasoning salt. And then about a tablespoon. This is the Costco version, but it's Mrs. Dash's original blend. We want a good amount in here because you want your dredge to be well seasoned, because that is what's going to be flavoring up your meat. And then we're going to add in about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. And we're going to mix this up. And this is kind of our coating, our dredge. And then we'll pour, after we coat our pork tenderloins, we will put some panko breadcrumbs in here. So we're just going to, again, mix everything up so that our seasoning is all throughout our flour. And you really need to make sure you flavor up your dredge. Don't just do like the flour plain and then season it the second coating. No, you want it seasoned both times so that your pork gets a nice flavor on it. Just going to slide this over here, make a little bit of room. So I've got that mixed up. Now we have 3 eggs, because I was pretty certain we weren't going to need a 4th. Here we go. And then I'm just going to use the same fork. We'll pop our yolks. And then we're just going to do kind of a quick mix on here to where we don't have any really runny like egg whites. You want to make sure that yolk is mixed all the way into it. So when after we dredge everything, we'll stick it into this little egg yolk mix or egg white mixture or yolk egg mixture. Here we go. That looks about good. Okay. And then I've got my panko breadcrumbs that we will add here in just a second. But I always like to make sure everything is prepped up and ready to go for this. And I'll put my oil in here so that when we're ready to turn it on, it's in there. We don't need to have so much oil that we have our pork tenderloin submerged. You just want a nice layer on there to go, keep it through enough that your full bottom is covered, but we'll be flipping it both ways. So it doesn't have to be like a deep fryer where you're putting it completely in. And I'm going to just start heating it up because it always takes a hot minute for it to heat up. So even though these are pretty thin, I'm still going to hammer them a little bit. That's going to make them more tender and more juicy when we do it. So we don't need to do much, but it just, again, it makes it nice and tender. Now, if your pork chop or pork tenderloin is much thicker cut, these are the thin cut ones, then you'd want to hammer it out a little bit more. And this is going to make it to where it's easier to bite through with it, because pork tenderloin is a little bit tougher than chicken. So think about a fried chicken sandwich. It's pretty easy to bite through. Pork tenderloin's a little bit more tough. So giving it a good beating, I guess, makes it more tender and easier to eat. Now, if you don't have a meat tenderizer, you can do lots of different things. So I actually just recently, in the last year, bought a meat tenderizer. But for years, I just used a garlic press that I never actually used for pressing garlic. And I would wrap it in plastic wrap, and I just would use it as my hammer because it was shaped kind of like a hammer. But yeah, you can do anything. You can even use a can, canned goods, just wrap it up in plastic wrap. A mug sometimes. You don't need to hit it so hard. Here we go. And then we got one more. But again, this is tenderizing it to make it juicier and easier to eat. Okay, now we are going to put them in our dredge here. So our nice seasoned dredge. So this is our first coating. And the whole key to this is to make sure that the egg will stick onto it so that when we do our nice kind of breading with the panko in it, which is going to give us more crisp, that will stick. Because if you try to go first into just egg wash without any flour on here, that egg is just going to slide right off your meat. So this is really important for getting it to stick. Here we go. I'm going to turn it down just a little. I don't want it to heat up too fast so that it gets hot before I'm ready to put my meat in. And then we're going to add our panko breadcrumbs to this, and then we'll do our egg wash and then in here. Now, my key, like my tip, and if you've watched me before, you guys should know this. Always use just one hand. This leaves you a clean hand to be able to manipulate and do other things in the kitchen. So I'm going to put my panko breadcrumbs in here, about a cup in here. Now, if you don't have the breadcrumbs, you can use regular breadcrumbs. You can also use crushed like Ritz crackers. I've seen it done with Rice Krispies and cornflakes, even potato chips. So there's lots of different things you can use to add crunch to your dinner or to your whatever you're frying. Okay, now we're going to go into the egg, coat it both ways, and as you can see, that is allowing it to completely stick onto our pork tenderloin here. And then I'm just going to take our breading and we will kind of coat it all the way around. And now, when our oil is nice and hot, we'll have a perfect tenderloin to drop in there. Now these, because they're hammered so thin, they actually cook up fairly fast, a little bit quicker than the chicken ones, which is nice because they'll keep your pork really juicy inside. Because if you notice, if you've ever messed up cooking a pork chop, it gets really hard and tough and dries out easy. With this cooking up really fast, your tenderloin stays nice and juicy inside. Here we go. And if I did just a really basic savory seasoning on here, but you can really go crazy with you could add in some Cajun spices if you wanted a spicier pork tenderloin sandwich. If you wanted something with an Italian flair, Italian seasoning, oregano, basil would be great in here as well. So you can really get creative and add like a unique flavor to your frying, which can change up your dish. Here we go. So pat this down, trying to feel how my oil is. And then we'll coat. And I will say, it is not difficult to dredge and fry your own food. It's delicious. I feel like it's better than anything that you can get frozen and reheated, like cooked up in the oven. You just have to be careful in the beginning. You have to make sure you get your oil nice and hot, but then once it's nice and hot, you want to turn it down to about a medium because you don't want to burn the food that you're cooking before it cooks all the way through. So I always say when you're frying, go lower and slower, and that's going to give you a nice crispy and golden brown coloring to it. And then my trick is I don't play with it when it's frying. I leave it to let it sit there and I just flip it once. And that's going to keep the breading intact and give you a nice crispy fry without it getting soggy. Okay. And the ideal, I'm not going to check it with a thermometer because I'll do my little water test, but the ideal temperature that I find frying with is around 350. It gives you a nice golden brown fry without it being too hot where it burns whatever you're cooking. Here we go. So I think earlier this week I did fried catfish, and my seasoning was kind of similar, but I did Old Bay in my mix. And it just adds, again, a nice little flavor to it. Let me slide these out of the way. And I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse, and then we'll check our oil and see if it's nice and hot.
I do have a question. How do you know it's done without checking it constantly?
So, because I'm cooking my meat over about a 350, once my skin is nice and gold and brown, it will be cooked all the way through because I'm not cooking it too high. Almost. Let me try. Had a teeny tiny drip of water on there. So when our oil is nice and hot, it should sizzle right away. We need to a little bit longer. It's almost there. So I typically heat my oil up at a higher temperature, then turn it down to my medium temperature, and I cook it that way. And when my crust has gotten golden brown on it, and then I flip it and do it on the other side, that's typically when my meat is going to be cooked all the way through. And now there's also keys is with these, they're hammered nice and thin, so they're going to cook faster. Fish cooks faster. With chicken breasts, I always fillet them in half to thin them out to do it. So if you're going to cook a really thick piece of meat, that's going to take a little bit longer. And typically if I do fried chicken with like drumsticks or chicken thighs, I will do a parboil on them first, which starts the cooking process. And that is simply dropping your meat in boiling water for about 5 minutes. And it starts the cooking process and keeps them nice and juicy. But with thinner cuts of meat, you don't have to do that. There we go. Nice sizzle right away. So I'm going to turn it down to about a 5. And then we're going to start dropping in our tenderloins. And my tip for checking the heat is if I drop a bit of water in, it will instantly sizzle up. And that's when I know it's nice and hot. And then I'll turn it down to low. I'm only going to do 3 at a time because as you can see, these have kind of covered up my whole bottom of my pan. I don't want to lay them on top of each other where they are taking room from each other or not getting that direct heat on the bottom. So now they're kind of sizzling at a medium. And let's get working on our creamed spinach. I wanted to say kale, but our creamed spinach. I'm going to turn this guy onto about a medium, like a 4 or 5, and then we're going to get a little bit of butter here. Because when I make creamed like spinach or creamed kale, I like to use butter. Most of the time I use olive oil in my cooking, but there are a few times that I like to use butter.
Do you ever need to change the oil during frying?
If you run out of oil, you would have to add some more, and then you would just want to let it sit up and like heat up again before putting meat back in it because you want it nice and hot. I typically, knowing that I'm going to be doing, based on what I have, certain number of batches, I know how much to kind of put in my pan to know how much I need. But there has been occasional times where I've had to add a little bit more, and it just means I have to pause for a second. Oh, well, thank you, Naim. We appreciate that. Okay, we're going to have our butter melt up here, and then we're going to add in some of our garlic and let that garlic kind of flavor come out just a smidge. And then we'll start adding in our spinach and some garlic salt. Now, my rule of thumb with using garlic is if the garlic is not the star of my show, I'm going to use garlic. If it's something like shrimp scampi where garlic is playing a key role, then I'll use fresh garlic. But if it's not, garlic it is. I'm going to go grab check on our home fries out of our oven, see if they need a little bit more or not. I always set my timer for 15 minutes with the air fryer because I like to check because sometimes it can cook up a lot faster than you think. So I'm going to look in here. They're looking pretty good. Yeah, you can see they're nice and tender. I put my finger right through it. So what I'm going to do, instead of taking them out, I'm just going to turn the oven off. This will allow them to crisp up a little bit more because they could get a little bit more golden, but it's going to slowly reduce the heat, but it'll keep my fries nice and hot until we're ready to serve them. And so that's kind of what I like to do. I check to make sure they're tender. And of course, when I touch the big fat fry, my finger went right through, which means they're tender inside. And this is going to allow them to continue to keep nice and crispy and warm until we're ready to eat them up. Okay, let's get this garlic toasting up. So with the garlic, we're going to heat it up, and I'm just going to let it sizzle in here for about 30 seconds to a minute so that it has this nice kind of flavor in there, and then we'll start adding in our spinach. I always say, watch your garlic. It can burn really, really quickly. So just always make sure you have a watchful eye on it. I have burnt garlic too many times when I'm not paying attention. Okay, while we're waiting for that to sizzle up, I'm going to cut up our cantaloupe for dinner tonight. Actually, like just got back from the store and I was deciding which of my fruits over there, I have honeydew, watermelon, and pineapple as well to cut up. I'm a big fan of cutting up my own fruit because it saves me a pretty penny. And when you're feeding a large family, anywhere you can save on groceries nowadays, because they're expensive, always works. And once you figure out how to cut up your fruit there, it's actually quite easy. Okay, let's give this garlic. I can starting to see it have a nice kind of crispiness to it. So we're going to add in our spinach. And then I'm going to check out my pork chop or my pork tenderloin and see if they're ready to flip. I'm going to add in half my spinach. And I'm going to turn this down and we're going to cook it slowly over our temperature. Let's see. Beautiful. Nice kind of golden brown fry on here. That one I'm going to actually let sit a little bit longer. It was there, but we got two of them ready. This is kind of the coloring that I'm looking for. So the paprika gives us this reddish brown golden fry over a basic blonde one. And when it starts to get this little browning, that's when I know it's ready to flip and kind of cook through. Oh, I already got my spoon here. Let's scoop out our seeds for our cantaloupe in here so we can slice it up.
Yeah, question, what are you making with the spinach?
I'm going to do just a basic kind of Parmesan cream spinach, or cream spinach with Parmesan cheese in it. I feel like growing up, spinach with Parmesan cheese was the first bougie vegetable my family ate outside of frozen mixed vegetables. And I have loved it ever since. And so I just kind of keep it simple. It's really just garlic salt, a little bit of cream, and Parmesan cheese. And it just makes a really delicious spinach. You can also use this with kale, though kale you have to cook a little bit longer. Okay, we've got the guts of our cantaloupe out. I'm going to flip this one now because I can see it's getting that nice kind of golden red color on it. There we go. And we're going to let these kind of saute or fry up on the other side. Let's do a little stir here. Again, I'm cooking this spinach nice and low because I want it to wilt up, but I don't want it to cook so fast that it's going to wilt up really, really fast.
Do you make a spinach dip?
I do. I love a good artichoke spinach dip or spinach, like a cheesy spinach stuffed mushrooms. I love it. But outside of my parents and my siblings, my husband and children are not in the same love of the spinach dip as I am. In fact, I had spinach artichoke dip at our wedding because I loved it so much. I was like, we're going to have it at our wedding. Because again, I feel like that was one of those bougie foods at the time in like the early 2000s that was everywhere. But I was like, I should sit there and make it one day. I was actually thinking about doing like a cheesy spinach dip with like sourdough bread where you bake it up in the oven and you could dip your sourdough bread in it and make maybe even sourdough breadsticks for it. Okay, I'm going to just start by slicing up my melon here. And then I'm going to show you a kind of a trick so you don't have to be an expert. All you have to do is slice it down and look. Now it's going to lay completely flat on your cutting board. And then you can just slide your blade through. It gives you a really close cut where you're not having any waste. But all you have to do is make a straight line cut. You don't have to arc your blade along your melon because it just giving the cut like this will allow you to just, what I do is I just push my blade into the cutting board as I move it along this way. And it's easier than trying to move your blade along the arc of the melon. And you could do this with honeydew, hammy melon, all the thinner rind melon. Now you can't do it with watermelon, but the thinner rind ones you can do it with. And it just is easier that way. Okay, let's give this a toss. We'll check on these, see how they're going. Like I said, pork chops, they cook up pretty fast because they're a thinner cut of meat. So once they're golden brown on both sides, I will know that they're ready. So we'll take a quick peek here, see how they are. Just about. Looking good. I'm looking for that reddish brown color on there. So they're just about ready. We'll let them cook for just a little bit longer, and then we'll remove them and add them. Over here, I have a baking sheet lined with paper towels, which will allow our things to cook up fast. And then we'll grab our home fries out of the oven. Remember, I turned the oven off, so it's just in there keeping it nice and warm. It will crisp it up a little, but it won't continue to cook it at high heat. And that's just a great way to make sure they're tender and crispy and hot when you're ready to serve them. Just leave them in there. And I always do is you turn it off about a minute or two before they're done at their full crispness, and that residual heat will crisp them up without making them overly cooked. Here we go. And I will say, cut up your own fruit. You will save yourself so much money because, to buy the cut up cantaloupe at the store, it's like what, for a medium sized container, $8-9. Well, this cantaloupe was, I think they were 2 for $5, so it was $2.50. And I'm going to get probably more cantaloupe in this for $2.50 than I would in the medium sized container at the grocery store for like $7-8. So it's like a 300% saving there. And it's, once you know how to do it, it's like really, really fast. And what I do to make it to where it's not an extra chore for me is I make my fruit prep a part of my dinner time prep. So when you're cooking, there's always some laws that you have, and that's been a great time for you to do it. Okay, lovely. We're going to remove these out. Remember, you want to put the greasy side down on the paper towel. That's going to allow it to suck up all that grease and give you a crispier, delicious pork chop or pork tenderloin. If you flip it up and you put the hot grease side up, what that will happen is that grease will sit and make a soggier pork chop or pork tenderloin. I don't know why I keep calling it a pork chop. So it's the same with all frying food. You want to put, like, when you put your bacon on a paper towel, you want to put that greasy side down so it can really soak up that grease and leave you with a crispy end. If you don't have paper towels, you can also do it on a cookie drying rack, and that cool air will pull that up. You just don't want to put them on a flat surface.
Question. Do you remember what you had at your wedding?
Oh, we had a very interesting collection. So I feel like we had beef tenderloin sandwiches, and we had a shrimp cocktail, and we had spinach artichoke dip, and I want to say we had like chicken skewers. What I did for our wedding was and we had a buffet type thing, and I did like little snack kind of bites things. It was like where you could have a bunch of different things. So it wasn't like a big plated meal. It was pick all of the different little like things so you could choose whatever you want. I want to say it was like an hors d'oeuvre dinner thing where there was just lots of little food bites for it. And that was a long time ago. And I always say, but so I'm from a big family, and I said I wanted a small wedding. I didn't want a large wedding, but I'm from a big family, and then my husband's parents are both from really big families. So just with us saying we wanted a small wedding where it was just our like immediate family, we had over 50 people. And I was the opposite of most people. I was like, let's just run off and elope and then tell everybody we're married. I'm not a person who likes a big fuss about them. So I kept it really, really simple. I literally, for my bridesmaids, which I just had my sisters do it, I told them, I said, this is the color I like. You guys decide on your dresses that you want. And I kept it really simple, but I think it was really funny is my middle older sister, she picked out the shoes for this. And my older sister had given birth a week before my wedding. And she made it there. My middle sister, picked these heels that were like that high. And my wedding was at this old observatory where you could actually go up and look at the stars and whatnot. But it was like this uneven rock path that you had. And I felt so bad because she was recovering from giving birth and she couldn't walk. So like the groomsman that was walking her down the aisle was like holding her halfway as she was stumbling across there. But she made it through for it. I will say, it was a pretty one. We had it kind of at night too. I'm gonna put a little bit of garlic salt in here, and we are just about ready. We're gonna go grab our home fries out because we're just about ready to serve up here. Then we'll add some Parmesan and get everything plated. Okay, let me grab this. Beautiful. So now you see how they're just perfect and crispy, how we just like turned off that oven and let that residual heat keep them warm and do their finished crisping part up of them.
How much cream did you add to the spinach?
I added about a tablespoon. I'm going to add a little bit more. I like to add my cream in batches because I don't like to flood it. I like it to kind of come and thicken up together. Here we go. Look at our beautiful fries. I always like to toss them together into a pile because it helps keep them crispy but tender. If you lay them out and leave them flat for too long, I feel like they dry out faster. This will keep them nice and tender and delicious. Okay, we have our tablespoon of cream in there. Again, I don't add a whole lot of cream. It's not like I do the really thick creamed spinach. This is it's got a creamy flavor, but more of a spinach. And I'm going to add in my Parmesan cheese. We're just going to put it over the top. We're going to let it steam for a second, and I'm just going to add again about a tablespoon more of cream, where we're just kind of coating the bottom of our pan here, and we're going to let it kind of bubble in there, and we're going to let that Parmesan cheese melt. We added a little bit of garlic salt, and we have that sauteed garlic in there, so it should be delicious. Let's split these guys. It doesn't want to give to me. There we go. Beautiful. Lovely. Got our nice kind of golden fry on it. I always rotate because this end of my pan cooks hotter than this end. There we go. We'll let that fry up. And once my cream spinach is done, we'll actually serve up. I won't make you guys sit with us while I fry up the rest of our food for everyone because I have enough to plate up dinner for you guys. Okay, let me grab a little spoon here, or a little fork. I'm going to taste my cream kale, see if I need to add, or not my cream kale, my cream spinach, in case I need to add anything else. Maybe a pinch more garlic salt. There we go. And that Parmesan cheese, as you can see, is already melted. And so we're going to have this nice, delicious cream spinach. I'm going to turn it off because it is nice and done. To jazz it up some more, you guys could always add in some pine nuts. That kind of gives you things. But let me grab my plate here. I'm going to turn this guy down just a little. And we're going to serve up dinner. So I'm going to bring my French fries over here. Let's see. It's not too hot. Okay. And there's my spatula. And I will say, the pork tenderloin sandwiches do on a brioche bun. It tastes much better than a traditional hamburger bun. Softer. They have, you know, brioche is a little bit sweeter than regular, but I feel like it pairs nicely with the pork tenderloin. So let's start. Okay, we're going to start with our home fries here. We have our homemade home fries seasoned with Lowry seasoned salt, onion powder, pepper, and flour to give it this nice, delicious, crispy coating that we cooked up in the oven on the air fryer setting. And then on our brioche bun, we are going to put our pork tenderloin that we hand breaded with flour, panko breadcrumbs, Lowry seasoning salt, Mrs. Astor's original blend, pepper and onion powder for a delicious, well-seasoned thing. I always serve mine with Chick-fil-A sauce because it's the best sauce ever. And I feel like it plays perfectly with it. And then we have our Parmesan creamed spinach, seasoned with garlic and garlic salt, cream and Parmesan, just to kind of balance out our meal. And then, of course, we'll have our cantaloupe as our fresh fruit. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you guys what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for what we made. So fried pork tenderloin sandwiches, home fries, and creamed spinach, and you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of my different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my big baking sheets, my hex-clad pans, my knives, my spatulas, cutting boards, everything I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out if you're interested in what we use. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.